Hi, my name is Sage. I live in a 2006 Honda Element with my dog Kopek. We are based out of the city of Bend, Oregon. Today is Friday, March 27th. We are currently kind of smack dab in the middle of the coronavirus pandemic here in the United States. We just yesterday or the day before passed up China in total number of cases by country. I wanted to make this video because I wanted to talk about what it is like being quarantined in a vehicle or a van. And kind of how it differs from how this whole quarantine situation or this whole shelter-in-place situation differs for those who live in vehicles versus those who live in traditional homes, apartments, that kind of stuff. I wanted to make this video because I think that it's interesting being quarantined or told to kind of shelter in place when you live inside a vehicle because you don't really have a shelter. And so I thought it was kind of a unique perspective on this whole thing. I also think that vehicle dwellers are both uniquely challenged by what's going on with the quarantine and everything like that, but also uniquely prepared for it. I wouldn't say that our challenges are greater or lesser than other people, but they are certainly different and certainly unique. I should preface this all by saying that this is my kind of personal perspective on everything. I think that not everybody who lives in a van or lives in a vehicle has the exact same perspective as I do on this, but this is kind of my lens of interpretation and how it's been for me, having been quarantined in my vehicle for close to 2 weeks now. So why do I think that this whole situation is uniquely challenging? I do want to say that this is not supposed to be me like complaining or whining about my situation being terrible. I don't think my situation is terrible. In fact, I think I probably have it better than a whole lot of other people, and I'm very grateful for that. But I do want to kind of analyze and take a look at the ways that this has been challenging for me in particular and van lifers in particular. One way in particular that this is challenging is the fact that I typically rely on gyms for a shower, and now that restaurants, bars, gyms, and anything that's non-essential has been shut down, I have no access to a shower outside of visiting friends or family. So I haven't showered in 11 days. I did a little spray down with like a garden pump yesterday, but that's the closest thing I've had to a shower in 11 days. Like I don't mind not taking a shower, but in this time when hygiene and cleanliness are super important, it does kind of create quite a bit of a challenge. That kind of goes hand in hand, no pun intended, with washing your hands. I don't have a sink in my car, so I have no way to wash my hands in a sink. I can get my water jug out and kind of let it run over my hands, but I don't have a limitless supply of tap water like the typical quarantined person at this point does living in a home. And so washing my hands is a little more difficult. I'm traveling with Kat, who does have a sink in her van, and we're able to wash our hands there and keep ourselves a little bit cleaner. But we still have a limited supply of water. Another unique challenge for people living in vehicles is that typically, in most cases, those people are relying on like coffee shops or McDonald's or Starbucks or whatever for internet. That's what I do. I don't have any like Verizon hotspot service or anything like that. I rely on those places for internet. And so now that those are kind of non-essential establishments, I don't have any internet access outside of my data plan. And even with that, because I'm kind of staying in more remote places, data on my phone has been very limited, and so it's been hard to access the internet at all. Kind of my biggest concern there is just that, one, I'll have trouble staying connected to friends and family and people I love, and then also just kind of keeping up to date on the latest news for this has been a little bit challenging being in those remote areas where I don't have internet. Obviously, public restrooms have also been closed down at this point, so finding a place to go to the bathroom has been pretty difficult, and following leave no trace principles as best as possible. This has kind of been my bathroom, finding a place, digging a cat hole if needed, and that's what I'm doing. And then probably the most unique challenge of this whole thing so far is the shelter-in-place order. Not because it's difficult to stay in my car, but more because the terms for sheltering in place when you live in a car are not that well defined. The terms when you're living in a house are easy to follow. You stay inside unless you are doing an essential activity like grocery shopping, going to doctor's appointments, taking care of family, that kind of stuff. But I can't stay inside. I don't have an inside to stay in. I think the thing with the whole shelter in place orders is that it kind of just has presented me with more questions than answers about what I can and can't do. Kat and I were both laid off from our jobs temporarily. And so we have like a month, maybe 2 months, maybe up to 6 months. We don't really know at this point, where we are not tied to Bend, Oregon. We're not tied to any particular place. And so we are trying to just figure out, how can we do a couple things. One, protect ourselves. Two, make the most of the situation that we're in the quarantine situation. And then three, protect others in the community around us. And it's kind of, we're not epidemiologists. We don't know what works best. We're doing our best to limit our impact on these communities that we travel through. We're trying to, not go into town except for emergency supplies. We're trying to be in remote areas so that we're not posing a threat to others and others aren't posing a threat to us. But it just leaves a lot of gray area and a lot of question marks that I think if you just had a home to stay in, you wouldn't have so much. So those are some of the challenges that I faced over the last 2 or so weeks of this whole pandemic. But I also feel like myself and others in the same situation of living in a car, living in a van or whatever, are uniquely prepared for this kind of circumstance. Probably the most obvious one is that people who live in vehicles are pretty used to being confined to tight spaces, not having multiple bedrooms, a kitchen, bathroom. It's not so hard for us to adjust to this kind of quarantine lifestyle. In fact, our whole lifestyle is a little bit like quarantine lifestyles in some ways. I think that living in a car, I also have had to kind of learn how to be creative with coming up with solutions for doing basic tasks like going to the bathroom, brushing your teeth, showering, that kind of stuff. These are not new challenges. I've traveled before and had long periods where I didn't have showers and I had to, kind of find other ways to clean off. I think probably anybody who has lived in a car has been in or put themselves in a situation like this where they've had little access to restrooms or showers or that kind of stuff. And that's just kind of part of the nature of living in a car. Another way that we're uniquely prepared is that people who live in vans or vehicles or whatever, they typically have everything that they own or everything that they could need with them at all times. So when emergency situations come up, we're pretty much prepared already for those types of things. And then the last one is just that we are mobile. It's very easy for us to go to remote places where we will not be exposed to viruses and that kind of stuff. We can do it at the drop of a hat. It's very easy for us to pick up and go. So with all that said, I do want to note that Kat and I, as we continue to isolate ourselves and continue to live this lifestyle, we are doing everything that we can to ensure that we are safe and healthy, and also that we are not posing a risk or a threat to others in any way that we can. So as I mentioned before, we are limiting our trips into towns, only going when we need groceries or other supplies, which is every few days maybe. We're both very well aware that these smaller communities because they're smaller communities, have limited resources. And so we're doing what we can to make sure that we don't put them in difficult places or put other people at risk. So when we go into grocery stores, we're careful about what we touch and how we handle things, and cleaning up before we go in, after we come out, that kind of stuff. We also have been very cautious about where we're staying. We're trying to pick remote areas where we will have contact with as few people as possible. And the places that we choose are not in towns. They're out in the wilderness, or they're out in the desert like here at Alabama Hills. And now that the severity of this whole situation is kind of becoming more apparent, we are doing the best to stay in one place for longer periods of time, not switching spots every single day, but kind of hunkering down for a few days, so that we're passing through fewer communities and limiting the potential impact that we could have on them. I want to kind of conclude by saying that this is by no means a vacation. Essentially, the city of Bend, Oregon and you know, the coffee shops there, the breweries, the places that I work, those are my living room. That's where I spend the majority of my time outside of my car. With this quarantine, it is effectively like my living room has been removed, and so I don't really have a place to hang out. And I'm not in any way complaining about getting to come to Alabama Hills. I love it here, but I just kind of had to find a new living room. I've had to find a new place where I can you know, spend time and in the same process figure out a place to do it that is safe. And so for me, places like this where I don't encounter other people, I don't have to come into close contact with people who I could potentially infect or who could potentially infect me. That seemed like the best route for my unique position. If you are also living in a car or a van or anything like that, and have kind of come up with creative solutions to making this time a little more bearable for yourself, I would love to hear suggestions about how you're tackling it. I've also been documenting this whole 2 weeks pretty thoroughly, and I'm making some more vlog style videos where you get kind of a little picture into what the daily routines look like. So if that interests you, go check those out on my channel, and please stay safe and healthy, and hopefully I'll see you soon. Yeah! Oh, whoa! Jeez, I almost just fell into my camera.